Hi, I'm Mike Tierney of Data Not Distress, and I wanted to go over something in just a quick way to point out something that I think has been lost in the last year, and certainly and it sort of plays on what I think is our denial that death is an essential part of life, right? As a wise man once said, if you live, your time will come. Mose Allison, and it's true, and you have to accept it, or else it really is, I think, irrational. You really have to take to heart that we only have a limited time here, right? And you're going to have to die. You have to. There's no option. And let's be honest, our medical science has done very little about our longevity, truly. Apparently the last 1,000 years, because I just went looking, and we've had people living into their hundreds, documented cases, and back in 100 BC, you could maybe think that their record keeping wasn't as good. But in the beginning of the 1800s, in the United States, our census shows that we had people living into their hundreds in like 1830. And still today, that's our max. Our medical science hasn't gotten us past that at all. So just something to keep in mind, that death is not an option. Death is something that we all have to face. So that being said, the CDC has put together a really, really nice infographic, I think, and I'll put a link to this on the video. But you can take a look at this yourself, and what this is for every roughly decade of life in the United States, what are the top 10 causes of death? And in this video, I'm going to focus pretty much just on age 65 plus. But I encourage you to go to the CDC site, and like I said, I'll put the link with the video here when I post it. But take a look for yourself. Take a look at your age bracket, and then if you live the dream, take a look at age 65 plus, right? So if you take care of yourself, you do good, you live into old age, right? 65 is it makes you a freak of nature. Honestly, we were never supposed to be predominantly living in this old. But here it is, the top 10 causes of death. And if you look at it in a realistic way, once you reach 65 plus, almost certainly it's going to be one of these 10 ways that you die, right? So in many ways, if you think about it, I mean, not that you get to choose necessarily, but look at the top 10 ways of dying and think about, really, in many ways, what you would rather avoid and which one really, is probably the best way to go. Because the reality is, we all have to die. We all have to die. These 10 ways, once you reach age 65, these 10 ways are one of the ways that you're likely to go, right? And so let's go down through this list real quick and just sort of think about what our body's going to go through, what you're going to experience. How would it be to die of these things? And so number one, age 65 plus, the number one killer, is heart disease, heart attacks. And every year in the United States, As many people as we have had die of COVID-19 die of heart disease every single year. Every single year. Every year. And you would think, like, it's like, where's our vaccine, right? How come we don't have a vaccine that prevents, sclerosis in the arteries and prevents the heart muscle from giving out on us? But there it is, right? 500,000 people every year die of heart disease, die of heart failure. So what's going to happen? Well, chances are you're going to be awake, right? Because it'll be some activity that you're taking part in that stresses the heart and causes that heart attack, sets off, the seizing of the heart muscle. So your heart stops. And you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that pain in your chest of this muscle that's been beating your entire life suddenly stopping, suddenly in a knot, like a cramp almost. And your blood flow is going to stop. And you're going to have to feel your entire body crying out for nutrient, crying out for oxygen that it's not going to get. You're going to have to feel that because you're awake. You're awake and you're going to feel your body dying out from under you. Right? I mean, it's not a great way to go. Right? And moving to number 2, with 400,000 people a year is cancer. And cancer, that same general idea, is that it might not be your heart, it might be your lungs, it might be your liver, it might be your pancreas, but you're going to have to feel organ dysfunction. You're going to have to feel your body ceasing to function like it should. And you're going to have to feel that happen to you. And ultimately, when an organ gives out, you're going to feel the pain of that, and that taking out the equilibrium that allows you to live. And that, not a great way to go either. You're going to feel a lot of pain and dysfunction, right? Next is chronic lower respiratory disease with 135,000 a year. And that's very similar in a lot of ways to cold and flu, but it's going to be a much larger, longer period of time where you are struggling for breath and using inhalers and that type of thing. But ultimately, what it will come down to is when you stop breathing, the first thing that's going to happen is that you pass out. You fall asleep, right? And if death occurs, you're going to be dying in your sleep. It really is, you'll be dying peacefully in your sleep. Now, chronic lower respiratory disease, it means that you've been suffering from this thing for many years, right? And, well, cold and flu is down below, we'll get there, but cold and flu is a much shorter progression. And the same thing, the same type of end, right? Where you will be asleep, and you can die peacefully in your sleep. With chronic lower respiratory disease, being a longer progression. So more kind of suffering with the failing, not being able to breathe. Next up is stroke, 127,000 a year. And that, it depends on what part of your brain is affected. Most people survive stroke. The stroke hits in an area of the brain that's not necessary to keep heart beating and your lungs moving, your digestive tract working, and so it depends. But this specifically is deaths. So you're probably talking about something in the lower section of the brain that would ultimately bring on a heart attack or stopping of the heart anyway, and or inability to breathe. And in any case, you're going to have to feel those sections of your body, failing on you. not the greatest way necessarily to go. Alzheimer's is next at 120,000 a year, and it's an interesting case because they say that you don't really die of Alzheimer's. You'll die of things like ulcers that likely are caused by the strain of the disease and that sort of thing. But again, it's the idea that you'll have to feel other areas of your body giving out from under you, right? Next up is diabetes with 60,000 a year, and again, that dying of diabetes is again probably ultimately kidney failure or failure of organs in your body. And again, the same idea where you're going to have to feel dysfunction, you're going to have to feel your body kind of dying out from under you. So yeah, not the greatest way to go. The next is accidents at 57,000 a year. Accidents are a bummer. And it depends on what happens to you in your accident as to how you die and how that is. But I would say, not the greatest way to go, and certainly as natural causes goes, it's one of the least natural for sure. And next comes influenza pneumonia, and that, and again, 65 plus is 48,000 a year. 65 plus die of influenza and pneumonia. And again, thinking about influenza and pneumonia, what you will end up having is a very short progression, right? Where you've just got 10 days or so of having trouble breathing. But then ultimately, like I say, how are you going to die? Well, you're going to die when you can't breathe anymore, and you'll pass out. You'll fall asleep. So ultimately, what you're talking about in dying of cold and flu, like COVID-19 or SARS or any other common cold we've ever had, or the Spanish flu or any of these other flus that we've had, is that you'll stop breathing. You'll pass out. You'll die in your sleep. All of your body actually dying is going to happen after you're passed out. You're going to be asleep and essentially die painlessly in your sleep, which, thinking about the other ways, organs giving out, things like that, I really think that cold and flu really is one of the best ways. And continuing just to finish the last two, nephritis is essentially infections that move throughout the body. So that's going to be very uncomfortable. And ultimately it's going to lead to an organ failure of some sort. And then it's just like the cancer case where you're going to have to feel your organs giving out from under you. It's not going to be comfortable. And in Parkinson's, if you're dying of Parkinson's, it's probably in many ways like stroke, that you'll have some kind of a dysfunction that will ultimately lead to organ failure, and again, like I say, that's the top 10. One of those 10 ways, and the Parkinson's is 32,000 a year, so we're down to where the top one is over 500,000. In the top 10, we've come down to 32,000 a year. So it's statistically very likely that it'll be one of these top 10 that you end up dying of, right? That if it's not one of these, it's going to be something that's a variation of the theme. That is, you're either going to be dying of organ failure, you're going to have to feel the dysfunction of your body and these organs dying out from under you, or something like cold and flu, the chronic respiratory disease, where you're going to have an opportunity to die peacefully in your sleep, right? And if you look at this top 10 and think about what your body's going to go through, and think about what each of these causes will actually end up doing to you, what your experience will be. To me, certainly, and I say please go to the CDC site, download this, and think about this for yourself. What would be the best way of dying in your old age? Or pick your favorite age bracket, they got them all. Go down through that list and think about it. What would be the best way? What would be the best way of going, right? 100% chance of dying. Death is a certainty. Death is something we all have to face, right? And like I say, I personally have very little fear of death. It's going to happen. It's simply something that you have to accept. And I think going through this and kind of looking and thinking about it, in many ways helps you to accept it. But as I say, looking through that list, cold and flu truly is one of the best ways of dying in your old age. If you look at all the other possibilities and you think about what you're going to be going through. So in that way, what I really kind of am getting at, and it is just the reality, is that cold and flu really is a good way to go. It really is not something to be afraid of. And why we are trying so desperately to ensure that elderly people it would have to die of something else, would have to die of organ failure, would have to feel their bodies dying out from under them, would have to be awake through pain and die painfully, versus an opportunity to die peacefully in your sleep. Think about it for yourself, but to me, I would rather die peacefully in my sleep. I would rather not have to feel the pain of my body dying out from under me, if you could choose. And not that we get to, certainly for natural causes, but that's the reality of things is that you have to think about it in order to accept it. You have to think about it in order to not be driven by and be able to be exploited through your fear. To me, it's a much more comfortable way of being when you can accept that 100% chance that's coming for all of us, and certainly looking at and thinking about this kind of thing, I think helps. So again, I encourage you, check out the link under this video for this. It's on the CDC site, top 10 causes of death by age, and to think about it for yourself, and take a look at that upper bracket. Take a look at the 65 plus. If you live the dream, and you take care of yourself and make it into old age, it's likely going to be one of those 10. And think about the experience that you want to have. Think about how you would want it to be. And in that ways, it's much more empowering, I think, to face reality, to face what is ahead for all of us. And like I say, by accepting it, by not having fear, you become stronger. You become less able to be taken advantage of. And that's a good thing in this world. So, thank you.